Welcome all to the 14th episode of the podcast Bitcoin as a Store of Value. And we have here Tuur Demeester. He's a Bitcoin analyst and very famous in Bitcoin community as Bitcoin Educator. Nice to get to know you, and thanks for the availability to have the space with us today.
You're very welcome. Can you just remind me your names?
My name is Alessandro Ottaviani, and
my name is Francesco.
we started this podcast like 3 months ago, and we already had 15 interviews. So we always like to invite people very knowledgeable in Bitcoin, so we can have a great conversation. And our goal is, our mission is to educate people on Bitcoin as a store of value. We believe it's the biggest narrative, the narrative that matters the most, especially for new joiners from 2024. I heard the first question will be, I heard you are in Bitcoin since 2011, correct? I think it's the first time that we interview someone from 2011. Can you share with us how was Bitcoin in 2011? I joined, for example, in 2017, and I heard in 2011 it would have been much different.
Yeah, so my first experiences were talking to my friends in Argentina, so that was only, one person. But then I did go to the first Bitcoin conference in London in 2012, I think early 2012. And so then you actually see the people. There was also the Bitcoin Talk forums, so you go to the forums and you see the discussion. And the first conference, it was very clear that it was only developers, only engineers, coders. And so I was the only guy who was more thinking about markets, or so many people there were saying, it's not, it's an experiment, this is not for speculating. This is beta software, we need to test more. And but I think the spirit is still there, to have a focus on the technology. It's still part of the Bitcoin culture.
And it's thanks to them that Bitcoin developed. He had a lot of block size war, different exposure, but still there. Also thanks to cyberpunk and crypto anarchists, they were the first, in the first cycle, in the first 4 years, was mostly from this group of people.
Yeah, and
so
it's no coincidence that 1 year before, the first Bitcoin conference was in Prague, because they have that tradition of, bottom up and what is it, liberalni polis, like the city within a city, like the parallel polis, so the parallel society that you create instead of the one that is already there.
In fact, they always highlight that Prague was the first, or Bitcoin, one of the first Bitcoin conference, the first Bitcoin community. Great to be here.
Yeah, and I remember seeing in the audience Max Kaiser in London. So he was another person who was not technical, but he and Stacy were both there to learn more, and they came also from the point of view of the banking system is broken. We need something new.
Yes, I think also every Bitcoiner now knows that the banking system is new, but I think in that year it would have been much harder to understand that Bitcoin is the solution. For example, from my experience, I started in 2017, then I dismissed Bitcoin, as many people they start, then they dismiss, and then they see Bitcoin later on.
Yeah.
And I continue in 2020 listening to Breedlove and Saylor, listening to reading the Safety book, or Antonopoulos. But in 2011 and 12, there was also not so much material available to understand, because so it would have been much harder to grasp.
Yeah, you needed to be okay with not understanding a lot of things, because I would talk to a core developer and I would understand 10% of what he's telling me, and so I would try to, okay, I understand this, okay, next conversation, I understand another 5%, and so gradually I had my own language, and then I would talk back to them, like, are you saying it is like this? And then they would say yes, okay, and then I would understand this piece, and so in a way I had to write the book in my head, to understand the pieces, but sometimes it's also helpful to not have all the detailed knowledge, because you are forced to always look at the big picture. And also there was a lot of very, very good discussion on the forums. Because same thing, people all around the world want to understand. Maybe I remember when the Reddit subreddit was only like 5,000 people, 5,000 subscribers on Bitcoin subreddit. So you get a lot of questions, answers. So people are very generous.
And likely would have been also more authentic. We see that where
Yeah.
at the big bull run, many people don't really understand Bitcoin, but use it as a marketing,
Yes.
just a marketing tool. At that time,
Yeah.
it was still in the beta.
It was very
test.
pure, very pure signal. But of course, some of the very early people still did not understand. They had their own way to talk about it, and only much later did it become clear that they were wrong. I think, you know.
Yeah,
So,
because back in the days, everything could have been possible. There was zero to no knowledge.
Yeah.
So I saw a trend of many early adopters. Then they diverted into other coins or Bitcoin Cash. So everybody makes a mistake. But I want to ask you: do you recall anybody who could have seen Bitcoin as an investment, as a store of value back then, or was impossible?
No. Yes, there were people. You know, Roger Ver, Trace Mayer is legendary. You know, Trace Mayer, he wrote about Bitcoin as an investment at 5 cents. $5 cents for one Bitcoin. And he was very clear, and he understood gold, and he understood the financial system, and he understood privacy, and he was an accountant. I think he has a law degree, but he was specialized in understanding accounting. So he had a very deep understanding from very early in the implications and how big it could grow. There were a few people, but there were people who really understood. Even people like Hal Finney, you know, even though he was a technical guy, he was like, well, you know, if everybody uses this, the price will go to very, very high, you know. $10 million for a Bitcoin, he said it. I think.
Yes, he said they will pass gold at that time, he was like a very pioneer.
Yeah.
Maybe on this point we could dig deeper. You mentioned Alfine. He was backing up the idea of Bitcoin banks. So we are on the chasm now between financialization and the anarcho-capitalist idea of the retail users. Do you think eventually those two waves are going to combine channel into the idea Alfine brought about back then, or it's not going to happen?
Yeah, that's true. You know, when he talked about how are we going to scale, because he understood 1 billion people cannot all use the blockchain. It's too small. So we need other. So he thought maybe there would be Bitcoin banks who manage 5 million accounts and then every now and then settle on the blockchain, do settlement. But he did not foresee that we would get Lightning or side chains, or also multi-signature transactions were not a thing yet. And so I think that the notion of a bank will change, because it comes from the gold world, which means that the bank has 100% control over the gold in its own vault, right? But if you have a multi-signature setup, I can be a key holder. I am trustworthy, I charge money, I'm very trusted, I sign transactions, but I am always 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 3. And maybe I am only the backup key, so my key is never active, only in emergency. So this changes the nature of what we think about as banks. They have less power, they are more humble, possibly in the future.
So they are going to be paid custodian with no single point of failure. I mean, widespread keys, each bank will have one.
Yeah.
Then there will be technology advancement where a failure one entity will not jeopardize everything.
Yeah, and so it means they have less financial power, you know. That means they, like a Swiss private bank, cannot be forced to give all the money to the government.
I think, in fact, more maybe than Bitcoin banks, because it can be misleading. We can say Bitcoin institutions, because I also believe there will be institutions, but it will be more fair. For example, there will not be fractional reserve banking, because if they use Bitcoin, then they will be audited, and it will be more Austrian school of economics, economic system, where banks should exist is a core topic for the economy, but they have to do two things: own deposit and change credit with debt, with credit with saving. So every saving of a person can be fuel can be used as a credit for an entrepreneur, but there will not be any more this fractional reserve banking that is so detrimental for our society.
Yeah, historically there were two types of contracts. There was the deposit contract,
Yes.
and there was the loan contract. Yes, and so a deposit contract is like you park your car in a parking garage, it gets stored, you take it back. You know that's the deposit contract. So a deposit contract means what you deposit is always instantly available back. If you want your car back, you come in, or like the coat, you get your coat back. A loan contract is different because it has a duration. So for example, I lend you 1 Bitcoin, we always need a term.
Yes.
So 30 days, 1 year, that's the term. So I have no access until the term is over. And so, and also I do not retain ownership. The ownership goes to you, and then later you have a debt to me. So historically, this was two different types of banks. We had deposit banks and lending intermediaries. For example, you borrow from me, and then you lend somewhere else, you invest. After 1 year, you pay me back plus interest. So Bitcoin allows, again, for these two banks to stay separate. And fractional reserve banking is when you marry the impossible and you create a Ponzi scheme. It's an impossible marriage, and it always falls apart. It always gets destroyed.
And also fractional reserve banking give the chance to bank to invest, to move money instead, or to invest also in risky assets, because they know also that the money can be printed,
Yeah.
and there's always someone backing up. In a real Bitcoin standard world, also I assume the banks will be more thoughtful on when, or to whom they are giving the investment.
Because fractional reserve banking is based on deception. And there is deception there. Imagine fractional reserve parking, like a parking lot, and the front says, "Park your car here. It's very cheap, 0 fee parking." Oh, great! I park my car. On the back side, it says, "Cars for rent," and they rent out your car. And one day you come and the car is gone. This is fractional reserve banking. It's the same thing. So yeah, having an honest system means either it's a parking, or you rent out your car, it's okay, and you get it back later, and there is some risk. There's more risk. So this will happen in Bitcoin because Bitcoin makes it more difficult to be deceptive. It makes cheating is more difficult because it's so transparent, right? And because we can have all these smart contracts and signature schemes that allow for monitoring or validation or backups, or even if something gets stolen, you have a red button to return the coin. So very interesting possibilities.
A new frontier.
Yeah, exactly. A new frontier in finance, in banking.
It's
Yeah.
called DeFi.
DeFi, the real DeFi.
The real DeFi on
Yeah.
Bitcoin. Are you bullish
Yeah.
on that?
Oh yeah.
And now we talk about the new system in such like simple, and it looks like easy to understand. But when we talk to common people that they are thinking the banks is okay that use fractional reserve banking, printing money, they think no, a system like this will not work.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is so hard for people to understand such a simple system?
Well, because the virus of Keynesianism, of justification for the system has spread all around the world. Like every country has a fiat system, every country has fractional reserve banking, and so it is like we are a fish and we are in the fiat water. It's everywhere, and it's only once you see like, oh, there is an island, you can go out of the water, like you can start seeing the difference. Bitcoin is like a mirror, it's showing us what is happening by contrast. You learn by contrast. And of course, the universities, the schools do not teach real financial history because we had a gold standard. These things existed, full reserve banking, like there is history of bankers in Italy who did fractional reserve banking who get decapitated. Their head gets cut off because they are playing with the deposits of the customers. The origin of the word bankruptcy is bancarotta, right? It was the bankers were sitting on the benches outside of the temple or in the public square. And so if the banker is embezzled your money and lost it, you said your bank is rotten. Like it's like Jesus getting angry at the money changers, you know. So it is here, but it was hidden from us because of how fast the fiat has spread around the world.
And totally agree. Also because people have really poor understanding of what money is. I include myself before studying Bitcoin. Also the fiat system didn't start as a banknote, but started to be backed by gold because gold was scarce. But people, when they also have difficulty to connect scarcity with money, they think, no, okay, it's fine that the state can print if we need more money to stimulate the economy. Always here to stimulate the economy, we need more money.
Yeah, also, if there is no alternative, there is no real benefit to deeply understanding because you have one system anyway. So you can buy some gold coins, but gold was suppressed for a long time. Central banks would keep selling gold into the market, so the price did not do much. So it's only with Bitcoin you get 50% return every year on average. You have a lot of economic incentive to study this because now you have to choose. Before there was no choice. It's like if you live in communism, what is the use to really deeply study communism? It's like you are stuck.
Talking about Keynes, do you have any hint why and how he came up with the development of such a system? Was he fueled by somebody, some powerful people back then, or he was either maybe intellectually dishonest just to become famous? Or did he actually believe in it? What do you think? Is there any history which you can guide us?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not that well read on Keynes, but I did translate a book by Jesus Huerta de Soto. I don't know if you know. He's an economist from Madrid, Austrian economist, and he wrote a big book about business cycle theory. And so there's a little bit of Keynes history in there. It's very interesting because he mentions that Keynes, I believe his father or himself, he was involved in life insurance industry. He basically was a big shareholder in life insurance company, and he got a bailout. He was rescued. And so experiencing the benefit, of being rescued by the state made him feel like this is a good thing, and so it allowed him to feel more bold to justify, but it's also ironic because during the 1930s, Keynes kept making money by investing in gold mines. So he was not eating his own dog food, he was writing like, oh, fiat is great and we need the economy is like an engine and we need oil to make it run nice, and meanwhile he's investing in gold mining companies. Also, at the end of his life, 2 weeks, I believe, before he died, he said, my theories were wrong. He said it. And then, of course, there is the discussion, he had no children, so maybe he was... somebody asked him, like, what about the long run? And he's like, in the long run, we are all dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So, of course, if you have children, you maybe think longer term than after you die, than the point till you die. Also, he died quite young,
On the other hand, Hayek saw his theory becoming secondary during his life, but only at the end of his life, the Austrian School of Economics was a revival in the 80s or 90s after the fiat standard.
Exactly. Well, also with inflation,
Yes.
I think in the 70s there was a lot of inflation, and then all of a sudden there was Austrian revival, and he got the Nobel Prize for economics. And so it's interesting, now we are starting to have inflation, big Austrian revival. I think this is the big one. I mean, we're only getting up to speed, because in all the Bitcoin books, we are now seeing references to Austrian economics, because it's the only true theory that connects with Bitcoin common sense. So I'm very excited.
He also wrote. He also said, "If I don't believe that we will ever have good money from the government," in his famous interview, but we will have a slighter. The only way is to have a slight about way that they cannot stop. And in the 80s, there was no technology that could have allowed this light around way, but then we had Bitcoin. So now we have not only the Austrian school revival, but also a tool that represents the Austrian school
very
revival.
prophetic words. Yeah, and he also wrote the book, The Denationalization of Money. So really believing we need the market to come up with solutions, because top-down government, the game is always rigged, right? We need honest rules that come from the bottom up.
And the bottom up will never choose for money an asset that is not scarce. Scarce was always one of the priority among other properties. But if there was no scarce, I always discuss with friends when we discuss about money, gold didn't become money because it was shining or it was used in the industry. Also for that, but if it was not as scarce as it was, it will never become money.
Yeah, there is a saying, right? Money is scarce, and if it's no longer scarce, it's no longer money.
Exactly.
But of course, when central bankers, when they criticize Bitcoin, they never talk about scarcity. They always say, "Oh, I cannot buy coffee with it."
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
or
No intrinsic
many
value.
scammers use it.
Yes.
You know?
or used by criminals, or too volatile.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
I feel also, we were discussing before at lunch, all the misconception will be debunked at one point, and we already see kind of debunking. For example, used by criminals. Now that we have the ETF, the financialization, legitimacy, they're not using them so much anymore.
Yeah.
I believe also once we reach maybe 3 trillion market cap or 4 trillion, this is a bubble. It comes from, it raised again and again. It becomes maybe the second asset, the most valuable second asset worldwide. It would be hard to sustain again a narrative that it has not intrinsic value and is a bubble. So probably the more cycle we have, higher the price, and we need higher price to debunk more misconception. Not for us, but for the common people.
Yeah, the end goal is Bitcoin is boring.
Yes.
That's the goal. And like the internet, because in the beginning also they said, internet, only pornography, it's only scams,
Sure,
you know,
same.
it's bad, like how could it ever be useful? I have a newspaper, why do I need, I have a phone, why do I need the internet? I have a television.
It's interesting,
Right?
You can make a very similarity. Internet is the thing you can compare the Bitcoin the most.
Yeah.
And another example, people saying, so far there are Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin is not boring or the standard.
Yes.
At the beginning there were internet conference.
Yeah.
Now there are not anymore internet conference or internet company and so on. Now they are just company.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin will be just savings technology and maybe money later on.
Yeah.
There is also a great room for improvements from the user side, but the great misconception is that it's so easy for the people to make them understand, and they actually understand the scarcity, the concept of scarcity, but then they cannot apply it into money, because in between there is a trust of the government and the Kenyans. Do you think how can we make a leap? How can people, would they have the government in between from scarcity to Bitcoin, make the leap? Is a game of trust, or there could be any hint and a way to speed up, or just a matter of market cap and the whole thing will do its course?
Well, I think they say never prevent your enemy from making a mistake, right? And so if we're talking about trust, we don't have to do a lot to show that the government is not worthy of trust. We just get out of the way and let them show that they don't do what they say they do. They don't keep their promises. They promise low inflation, the inflation is very high. They promise low deficits are super high. They promise strong bonds, the bonds are crashing. They say real estate is great, real estate is crashing. So it's happening. So this is going to, and so of course the argument is I agree, is classical. It's saying Bitcoin is not backed by anything. Fiat money is backed by the trust of the government. It's like Okay, well, is that a good backing for money? Don't you think money needs to earn trust instead of we just give it for free? So, and we see the trust in the government reflected in the value of the money. That's why the euro is going down. All the currencies are going down.
Yes, so we're gonna wait basically for the corpse to reach down the river and then to witness.
On the way, more and more people will understand.
We will see.
And I think also to try and still have some caution ourselves, to try to, not pretend like we win the war and we need to. I think we don't need to do that much. We don't need to make a big protest in the street or something naturally the value, better technology will win. Yeah. So in that sense, of course, it helps to talk to people and explain things. But if people are hostile, you can just walk away. It's okay.
They're not ready yet.
Maybe yes. They come in a
year.
They
will be ready.
10 years. Yeah.
I think every person has a price of Bitcoin when they will admit that Bitcoin is the thing. And if people are hostile now, it means the price is too low for them.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah.
I also moved, and I think it's common in many Bitcoiners. Once you think that you have a decent understanding of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the thing. You proactively discuss with your contacts, with your friends, with your colleagues. But then you see there is a pushback, or you try to put Bitcoin in every conversation.
Yeah.
So at one point I reach, it's important that they know that I'm a big fan of Bitcoin and I'm willing to educate. But I will not proactively make outbound marketing because otherwise it could also be counterproductive. I see also in X people posting that their friends after an evening out they're saying, "Hey, can you stop to discuss about Bitcoin?" Yeah. So maybe they will become hostile on Bitcoin because someone is really pushing. I had a lot of friends, all my circle of contacts know me about Bitcoin, and it's not by coincidence that in the last 3 months, some of them they contact me. In 2022, no one contacted me with the price so low, but now they're coming back.
Yeah.
What metric? Go ahead. What metric do you prefer to gauge the success of Bitcoin? Do you prefer to track the market cap and to see it as a metric, or the network effect according to the mathematical law? Because from one end we have the two things should be correlated, but maybe they could be not. Because if we have on the one end institutional investors, which have a bigger effect on the market cap, on the other end retail, which has a bigger effect on the Met Alpha law, because there will be more than that.
And so how do you measure the network effect? Like, for example, in your example,
we measure by the squared number of nodes of people who interact with each other. And that will spread awareness around, but a very base layer, like many retail people who put $10 each, as opposed to a big whale institutional player who deploys 2 million. Which one is more important to you, or is it going to be a mix?
I would say the Bitcoin price is the most important because it's the most pure signal. The whole world is thinking, how much is Bitcoin worth? And then we have many exchanges and order books, and eventually we have more or less one price around the world. This is like a global consensus. It changes every time, but it's still, it's people often underestimate how important the price is as a signal of what the world thinks. And if you talk about different metrics, the problem is always how do you calculate? How do you know how many nodes are in the network or what type of nodes? And it doesn't mean it's never important, but I feel number one is the price. Money talks, and also you could say liquidity too. So maybe market cap can. Like there's a lot of crypto coins that have high market cap but no liquidity.
Right.
So maybe you have to adjust a little bit for liquidity, just to make sure that it's not just a scam, right? Because if I create 1 billion tokens and I sell one to you for $5, now I have $5 billion worth of market cap in one snap. So.
Wash trading, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. Yeah. But Bitcoin has very deep liquidity.
great to hear mentioning the price. I also agree, and I think it's maybe undermined sometimes in the Bitcoin community because some people like to say, that we don't discuss about the price.
Yeah.
We can avoid to discuss about price among Bitcoiners. We can have a 2 hours conversation.
Sure.
But to discuss with a new person the historical record, he has to see the gains that he could make in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Most of the people, and without the price, likely we will not have mass adoption. If Bitcoin was remaining at 16K for 2 years,
Yeah.
there will not be many less people in its conference, but also many less people interested.
The price history of Bitcoin is the history of how the world feels about Bitcoin. It's the same thing. Yeah.
And now
And that's
we can,
important.
Now that we discuss about price, we can connect to volatility. How you respond if someone is say, okay, but Bitcoin is too volatile for me?
Yeah, it says nothing about Bitcoin, the technology. It says everything simply about how the world feels about Bitcoin is the only input into the volatility of Bitcoin. And, you can give examples throughout history. One example I like to use is petroleum early in the 1860s when they first started distilling petroleum and making kerosene and making it useful. The price was extremely volatile, and it was different in different places around the world, different oil prices. And even today, European oil is still a bit different from American oil. But it's the same, but still there's so much less volatility because there is almost consensus. Oil is important, we use it for many things, whereas in the beginning, you don't know what am I using this for? Is it useful or is it wasteful? And that's why volatility was extreme for a few decades in the beginning. So similar, it's like a discovery process. So that's why it's volatile now.
And now for Bitcoin being money is even more. So this is value, what you just said is valued even more because it's also an investment. So the monetization of an asset at the beginning, if more people they believe in it, then it goes up.
Yeah.
Then they say, okay, no, it's a bubble, then it crashes.
Well, yeah, and there's also there is a supply inelasticity. So
yes.
the supply is inelastic. So if the price goes up a lot, you cannot compensate by producing more Bitcoin. It's always the same production. Whereas with oil, if the price goes up a lot, then you have a compensatory effect by creating more oil, price gets stabilized a little. There's none of that in Bitcoin. So it's inherently more sensitive to emotion in the market.
A great answer. I will use also your thesis.
Of course, yeah.
Probably so far Bitcoin is not volatile. It will be one of the last misconceptions that people are still saying when they are skeptic about Bitcoin.
To me, it's not 100% always true, but I think oftentimes people who worry a lot about volatility are usually more out of touch with the real world. If you are an entrepreneur, you have more feeling that not everything is like you want it. Sometimes you have no supply, sometimes you have a lot of supply. You are used that the world is a volatile place. The weather changes all the time, those kind of things. Whereas if you are a bureaucrat or an academic, you live more in an artificial world and you want everything to be predictable and programmed, and of course you are more sensitive to experiencing big price changes, but it means to me you are scared of the world rather than Bitcoin is wrong.
We had the first examples of businesses looking, in my opinion, for volatility because they deployed part of their treasury after MicroStrategy move. There's a Japanese and another American. As soon as they deployed capital in the stock really went up by a lot.
Right.
So that they were advised and they were looking for it. You think it's going to be a path for some small businesses who want more exposure and to leverage on volatility to be more known in the market and attract more capital?
Yeah, it seems to fit into portfolio theory, or modern, whatever the word is, the current theory on how to escape inflation. Because really, portfolio theory is all about trying to play the poker game in a way that you don't lose against inflation. You have to keep jumping around to not lose the game, like a platform game. And yes, studying volatility is a part of that. You for example, if you borrow money as a company, as a public company, you issue a bond. You're saying, I'm borrowing money. the market wants you to invest that money into high volatility assets, apparently. So yeah, now that Bitcoin is wrapped up in a safe financial product like ETF, and it's still high volatility, it fits more easily in those kind of strategies.
Because the first interview about that, Michael Saylor did a couple of months ago in Brazil. He was saying, I didn't expect that happened, but his explanation that happened because there was a lot of liquidity, because MicroStrategy is a big company, and that attracted the option trader to create some volatility. But that revealed not to be true, because some smaller companies, like the other Americans, they had the same effect, the Bitcoin allocation had the same effect of increasing volatility. So it looks like it's a trend which is also independent from liquidity, and that could attract a lot of businesses.
It's funny, right? Because we saw the GameStop and Wall Street Bets guys jump on stocks that were just had funny names, or meme stocks, and pushing it up. But now it seems like these people are jumping on Bitcoin strategy companies, and will make those the speculative vehicles. So it could be, I think it's inevitable that we get these speculative bubbles as we get later and later in the end stage of fiat, right? The end stage of stable Western currencies. Like, this is the last phase. Like, of course, we've seen Argentine peso and other Turkish lira, they become extremely volatile and inflationary. Well, same is happening with the yen and euro dollar, and as a result, we see speculative bubbles. It's not people don't go. It's not like Keynes says. All of a sudden, people go crazy. It's like no. The environment, the money gets poisoned, and then people, I'm losing my money anyway. Why not gamble a little bit? That's the mechanic, I think, the dynamic.
Okay, interesting. And now that you mentioned the ETFs, one question on this: do you think it was a big change or a big thing in favor of Bitcoin adoption? The approval of Bitcoin
extremely
ETF?
big, extremely important, and it's only still beginning, because I keep saying it, but I feel like it's a kind of a good metaphor in that the way the financial system works, it's kind of hierarchical, and so we have the Vatican on top and the powerful cardinals, and then at the bottom we have the priests, and so they talk directly to the constituents, and they are the financial advisors, and so now that we have ETFs, they need to educate all the financial advisors with PowerPoint slides and like little brochures. This is how and why Bitcoin ETF fits in your portfolio, and so they need to have a story. So it's going to take some more time for them to be updated. So that's why I believe we will see much more money going into the ETFs, and also the big institutions. Also, they take their time. They 2, 3, 4, 5 years before they go into a new asset class. Also because there is career risk, right? If I work in an endowment, like a university, large fund, or a pension fund, we are a team making decisions, and I am the one saying we need to go to Bitcoin. I am putting my career at risk, because if Bitcoin goes down, I can just get fired, So there's often more stagnation because of that career calculation in people's minds.
Let's say no one wants to be in the first row to be exposed of the risk, for example, in a ship.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no
Also,
one wants to be in the last row.
Yes.
So probably there will be also an inflection point
Yeah.
when there will be a rush.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think all will think the same, because once it will be agreed, I think at one point it will be hard to justify 0% allocation in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
1 year ago it was hard to justify a certain allocation. At one point, okay, you can be also kind of hostile in Bitcoin, but why not 1%?
Yeah.
And
So of course, if you do 1% and you don't rebalance, then it goes to 10.
Yes, and maybe then they will allocate more. But
and then everybody else who has 0, they're like, oh, my competition has 10.
Let's go with 5%.
Yeah, instead of 1. There's also a saying, the second mouse gets the cheese. It's the same idea. Like, you know, the first one gets the mousetrap, the second one gets the cheese. So, but then there is game theory, of course, where everybody wants to be the second. You don't want to be number 10, because then it's gone.
True.
It's interesting that we have a mismatch. Bitcoin is also politics. It's narco-capitalism, and then we have the central control. But in the US, for example, you have short terms of 4 years mandates of politicians. So their side is, of course, short term. They want to go to the next mandate. So I think Bitcoin as opposed to this long-term view. So I think that Bitcoin already won on that political battle, because there is cannot be a politician with a long-term mandate which is going to be against Bitcoin. They just cannot short-term, and short-term is not perceived as a reliable decision.
Yeah, it's like the same. I think almost literally the same. You're a trader. If you trade against Bitcoin, eventually you lose.
Okay, the same thing.
If you go long, you win, and the same with politicians. Like maybe they win short term, like Gary Gensler or something. They make a little bit of wins, and then they make one big mistake, and it destroys their career. And then maybe another politician like Bukele, it's a little volatile, but long term, it's the best strategy, you know, to be long Bitcoin, because you make your people rich. You don't even have to give them anything. You say, you are allowed to buy Bitcoin, I support you, and then they become happy. It's the easiest thing.
Good analogy with Bitcoin holding. I think one of the things that prevent people is our narrative. It's too boring, and it looks like too easy, too simple to be true. Because we just say, go on Bitcoin, buy and hold. That's it.
Yeah.
Like sit on a bench. You can also drink from doing your job, spend less than what you save in Bitcoin and just hold. And for people, they are used to think that the real winner in the stock market are those who continuously research stocks, EBITDA, PA ratio, and they think, okay, but if I just buy and hold, it's too easy, it cannot be true. So it sounds like too boring for them.
It's Isaiah Berlin has the little short story about the hedgehog, like with the spikes, and the fox. And the hedgehog, the fox knows many things. He's very creative. He's always strategizing. And the hedgehog knows one big thing: is if there is danger, I sit and I do this.
True.
That's it. That's the only thing they know. And the hedgehog always wins. The fox cannot get it. Or similar with the turtle and the hare. It's knowing one big thing is extremely powerful. But yeah, it's deceiving, right? We live in a culture where being a smart speculator is the ultimate, ideal, instead of simple, continuous, gradually, no leverage, those kind of things.
Vision, can we say? Vision.
Yeah.
People lack vision because
low time preference. Vision.
It's very. I think it's the most asymmetric information in the world, and it's great. Also, here being in Prague, you make some. We discuss with people, and you can have some discussions. And out there with common people, they think maybe we are too risky, or we have a limited mind because we only discuss about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
While it's the opposite. Like it's not that we have limited mind, but I was also personally in crypto, Web3, but at one point compared to Bitcoin, nothing.
It's like Bitcoin is the mountaintop, and you stand on top of Bitcoin and you see so far. It doesn't mean you only think about the mountaintop. It's like, no, I want to go there so that I have the best vision, the best view.
And yes, and it's also not only a paradox, but very interesting that to understand one thing, Bitcoin, you need to know so many things around. And that's also what prevents people. Like you need to know economy, kind of technology. We discuss about politics, human theory, energy usage. Also, we will need another episode for this. But how misleading is the energy usage? And then you reach to this one thing, and then it's all what matters actually.
And also you need emotionally, you need to be strong enough to be a contrarian. You know, you go against many narratives with your actions.
Yeah, that's also I find very. It should be an ingredient for every person in Bitcoin, because I also have friends that keep reading only New York Times, The Economist, and Bloomberg. I always tell to them, if you don't do, instead of doing the own study, deep dive, you listen only to them, you will never get early technology, because they will spread any technology only once you reach a certain adoption. So new technology, you need to do the work by yourself, not trusting.
Exactly, you do the work. You know?
And the work is
Bitcoin is meritocracy.
Yeah.
Like it's not status based. It's just you do the work or you don't.
Yes. It's a transfer of funds from the privileged people to the people who have merit. Because in the fiat system, people who are there closest to the government, they benefit, as opposed to Bitcoin, which is the money of the people.
I agree. Amen.
It's fantastic.
Another topic I wanted to discuss also, so you are in the Rothschild co-founder, so
Yes.
from Austrian School of Economics.
Yeah.
Was one conversation in the Bitcoin world is Bitcoin is really the money that Austrian schools will teach, like scarce, and but still Austrian school world didn't get Bitcoin at the beginning. Only few people from the Austrian school. Which are the reason why they are also them that you would expect? So I was interested in Bitcoin, then I studied Austrian school economics, and then I said, okay, that's how economics works. That is the thing. So I would expect that people who had already great knowledge in Austrian school of economics would recognize it at the beginning. But it didn't happen. Why do you think?
I think the challenge is that, after so many years of theorizing without a lot of direct, and I'm sure Stefan would know a lot about this too, talking about Austrian school and how they did not understand Bitcoin. Stefan Livera is in the background.
Next step.
Next guest. So they were theorizing and in an academic setting for many years in obscurity, and all of a sudden we had a real life implementation of some of these ideas. I think they were a bit reactionary, and so they were like re-looking at their theory of money, and they said, but Menger said there is the regression theorem, and it says here in the book, money has to be a commodity first, and only then can it evolve to real money. And so Bitcoin is not a commodity; it's just nothing. And so in a way, they lost some touch with the technology, with the technological world, with the marketplace. And I mean, of course, now we are seeing a lot of change in attitude and those kind of things. But yeah, it was I think it was a good lesson. It was like the market was like saying, hey, you guys a little bit too dogmatic. Like you have to, apply like Aristotle, where you have a theory and then you also always try to test with reality, and you doesn't mean you forget about your theory, but it helps you think about things from first principles. I don't know.
That's a good topic. I heard this also other times, especially Rothbard. In fact, he wrote about the history, gold and the seashells. They had the utility before, and then they became money.
Yeah.
But Austrians thought it should be prescriptive, meaning it has to be like that.
Yeah.
Instead, it was more describing from the past. It doesn't prevent for something.
Also, Mises said value is subjective. So who says that when Bitcoin initially, when people started collecting Bitcoin in their wallet, it's a collectible. So maybe that is enough for it to be a commodity. Maybe a collectible is a type of commodity. So you just interpret commodity more broadly, and it's fine.
Do you think that the inflection point is a mathematical concept? Because let's think about the seed, guessing the seed phrase. There's a 10 at 90, big number. Our brain cannot comprehend. Does it work also in reverse for like in Argentina at this point nobody wanted the in Venezuela the Bolivar anymore, they dismissed it. They didn't believe it because that number their brain perceived as not trustworthy anymore. I mean, do you think that clicks in a mathematical threshold in our psychology, or is it more a matter of understanding and believing, trusting the government, losing trust for political reason, or do you think this is a mathematical concept? When it clicks?
Are you asking why people in developing countries understand Bitcoin more quickly?
No, why people at a certain point they don't want the local currency hyperinflated anymore? Is there a number where that clicks? As we know that nobody can guess the seed phrase, so we feel safe. In reverse, so is then the inflection point in this Bitcoin adoption and everything adoption, a mathematical threshold.
Yeah, I think I would say it's probably emotional, right? It's like a combination of the pain of the inflation tax is high enough, and the fear of the consequence of protesting is low enough, like some kind of combination where high pain and low fear, and then you get people demand change, like Argentina. People were not afraid I will be sent to the gulag, right, if I vote. Whereas in Soviet Russia, there was a lot of pain, but the fear was very high, so they did not change the system until the curtain came down in the 80s.
So
I have to wrap up soon. I'm sorry.
It's a psychological development.
Is how I think. Yeah.
And one last point we'd like to discuss before the wrap up. I also listened to your interview with Bram Kanstein in his podcast Bitcoin for Millennials, and he's also focused on millennials.
That was great. Great.
He's one also we discuss often. I was also in his podcast. Bram is great. And also about demographic and millennials, you also said you are older side of millennials as a generation, we as well. So we see many Bitcoiners in the older millennials side, let's say. I think also if we were lucky, one is not that we hold Bitcoin being lucky, but maybe also we were in the best position as the demographic age. What do you think? Because many are the kind of old millennials.
For me, because we were just right there when, after the dot-com bubble, I was a teenager, so I don't remember that very well. But then 2003, 2004, installing BitTorrent, downloading movies, and then eventually to me it was like, oh, Bitcoin is like BitTorrent for money. So that there was no CEO of BitTorrent. It was just open source software, not centralized, and so I think that made it easy. And also, like, still seeing the internet in the infrastructure phase. Like, you see a lot of, things go badly, like other things get stronger. So you are used to, also, for example, domain name speculation. Like, people would buy pizza.com and then sell it, and this is all digital goods, not tangible, but we know that they have value, right? Or digital music, whereas the older people, they think, oh, we need physical vinyl or something, and the younger people, maybe they are more growing up in a centralized internet. I think we kind of had that early.
We are kind of in the sweet spot. I think
maybe.
Good point you said. I still remember when we grew up with internet developing. Still remember in the first years when I was a child, internet was taking some seconds, making a strange sound, and then it was crashing. And it took like 2, 3, or 4 times. Now you can just Wi-Fi done, connected.
So when we see Bitcoin doesn't work perfect, like we're like, it doesn't mean it will never work.
Also, we are also being in the 30s when Bitcoin become more institutional, or even early 40s. We are also automatically interested in savings, and I think while the younger generation, firstly, is more into tech, and if you're more into tech, then the crypto coins, Web3,
and also gaming, also.
Gaming, yes, and if we, as you also mentioned several times, Bitcoin as savings technology investing. If you are 22, 24 years old, you don't have likely money to save. So that also. So I think if one thing that we were likely is to be born in the right decade for Bitcoin.
I think so. Yeah, just like like Bill Gates also. Like he was just the right age, and then he had access to a computer early, and it doesn't mean he did not. You still have to do it. you know, but it helps to be in the right generation. Yeah.
I always say to our generation that Bitcoin is the opportunity.
Yeah.
Internet, we were too young.
Yeah.
For the next big, first I think Bitcoin will be the big thing of the century, also at the end of the century. But even if it comes something similar to Bitcoin, likely we will be too old.
Yeah.
And if we take it, it will not change our life.
Yeah.
Bitcoin can change our life. Oh, great.
It was amazing.
Yes. First episode in person.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Thanks to the availability, we discussed yesterday, and we are here. We are in the podcast. We were also discussing how many big accounts in X are Bitcoiners are so like down to earth that
wow.
we discussed yesterday, and today we are here. Maybe in other words, they will be okay. Send me an email. We'll see in 3 months. But we made this. Do you have any wrap-up comments for our listeners?
No, really. I mean, I'm excited to come visit Lugano. You know, I know a lot of great stuff is happening, and it's wonderful. Also because initially Switzerland was more like crypto and Web3 and the ICOs and so it's nice to see that there is a Bitcoin hub in Switzerland. Yeah.
Yeah, it's growing. Let me know when you come.
Yeah.
I will guide you.
Yeah.
Even if I stay there for just 1 year, but I settle a bit. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
you.
Too. And see you in one of the next episode. Great conversation.
Bye.
Bye.